They called me the family's biggest disgrace, and for a long time, I believed them. That line still echoes in my head, sharper than any slap, heavier than any silence. I remember standing in that dining room, everyone's eyes on me, no one daring to speak. My mother's face was cold marble, my father's silence was the final judgment. All because I spoke one truth they didn't want the world to hear. In our house, respect was never earned, it was performed. My sister was the pride, my brother the heir, and I was the reminder that perfection was a lie. Every time I opened my mouth, they said I was ruining the family name. But they never asked why I had to speak in the first place. It's strange how quickly love turns into shame when you refuse to play along. I used to beg for their approval, now I only want justice. Because the night they called me a disgrace, they forgot one thing: I'm the daughter who learned dignity from them, and I'm about to show them what it really means. I grew up in a family that looked perfect from the outside, polished smiles, Sunday church, family dinners where laughter echoed louder than truth. The Lewis family name meant respect in our town. My father, Richard, ran a successful construction company. My mother, Helen, hosted charity luncheons like royalty. People said we were the family everyone envied. I used to believe that too, until I realized envy fades when you see the cracks beneath the shine. At every dinner, my father would raise a glass to family honor. Elena, my older sister, would smile, the golden child who never spoke out of turn. Noah, the youngest, would laugh at everything, his confidence untouchable. And then there was me, Amara, sitting across from them, pretending the food didn't taste like silence. When guests visited, my mother would introduce us like trophies. Elena, our business manager. Noah, our future CEO. And Amara, she helps with community work. Her voice always softened on my name, as if she were excusing a flaw. I tried not to notice, but the tone always cut deeper than any insult. I used to wake up early, make breakfast, iron Dad's shirts, and check on Mom's event schedules, hoping they'd notice the effort. But in that house, good deeds didn't earn love, obedience did. And I wasn't obedient enough. There was a pattern, one I only began to see as I grew older. When Elena made mistakes, my parents called them learning moments. When Noah failed, they said boys will be boys. But when I questioned anything, even gently, I was accused of disrespect. Once, I asked my father why Noah got promoted in the company despite not finishing college. He didn't even look up from his newspaper. Because his family, he said. I wanted to ask, am I not? But my mother's glare silenced me. Still, I kept trying. Birthdays, family barbecues, business parties, I was always there, smiling on cue. I thought maybe if I worked harder, stayed quieter, they'd finally see me as more than the difficult one. Then came the night of the annual Lewis Charity Gala, our biggest family event. The hall sparkled, our name glittered on every banner. Elena stood beside Dad, delivering a flawless speech about honor and transparency in business. Everyone applauded. My mother's proud eyes glowed. And as I clapped too, I saw something, a file in Elena's hand, one I recognized from Dad's office, the company's financial report. The one I wasn't supposed to see. I remembered the missing numbers. The hush-hush transfers. The warning Grace, our lawyer friend, had once whispered to me, Amara, don't sign anything without reading. That night, I smiled for the cameras, pretending I didn't feel the weight of a secret pressing against my chest. Because somewhere between the lights and applause, I realized, this family wasn't protecting its honor. It was hiding something. The first real crack appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning, the day my father gathered us in his office to discuss the company's future. He sat behind his mahogany desk, Elena beside him, Noah lounging on the sofa, scrolling through his phone like he owned the place. I took the last chair in the corner, the one no one offered me. Dad cleared his throat. I've decided to split responsibilities. Noah will handle client accounts, Elena will supervise operations. He paused, glancing at me briefly. And Amara, you can continue assisting with reports and community coordination. Assisting. That word stung. It was their polite way of saying stay out of the way. I tried to smile. Dad, I thought I'd be taking over the compliance side. I've been handling those audits for months. Elena gave a small laugh, soft and sharp. Oh, Amara, it's not about effort. It's about trust. Her tone drew laughter from Noah. Even my father smiled faintly, the kind that burns more than anger. Trust.
I repeated quietly.
You mean obedience.
The air thickened.
My mother, standing near the door, sighed. Not everything's about fairness, Amara. Families work on respect, not competition.
That word again, respect.
It had become their shield, their excuse for every injustice. From that day, everything shifted. Elena began controlling staff emails and rewriting reports I had already finished. Noah started spending company funds on client entertainment, expensive cars, private parties. And whenever I tried to question the inconsistencies, my father's temper would flare. Don't interfere in things you don't understand, he snapped one afternoon. Noah knows what he's doing.
I looked him in the eye.
You mean like the 200,000 missing from the construction account? He froze, but only for a moment before his voice dropped lower. Be careful what you say, Amara. You're starting to sound ungrateful. Ungrateful, another word they used to silence me. I went to my mother later that evening, hoping she'd listen. She was arranging flowers in the living room, her face serene as ever. Mom, please, I said softly. I think Noah's hiding something. There's money being moved, and Elena's signing off on it. Her hands didn't stop moving. You need to stop digging into things that don't concern you. It's the family business. I raised my voice for once. It concerns all of us. She turned, her eyes cold and steady. Not everything needs to be exposed, Amara.
Some things are better buried.
For everyone's sake. That night, I cried quietly in my room, realizing I wasn't protecting a family anymore, I was protecting their illusion. Days later, I overheard my name during a phone call. Elena was in the hallway, speaking to my father. She's getting suspicious, she whispered. If she opens her mouth, it could ruin everything.
I'll handle her, Dad replied. Handle me.
As if I were a problem to be managed, not a daughter to be heard. By the next week, I was removed from company access.
My passwords no longer worked.
My office key was misplaced. They said it was a technical mix-up. But I saw the look on Elena's face, smug, victorious. At dinner that night, I confronted them.
So this is it?
You cut me out because I won't lie for you. Elena's smile didn't waver. We're just protecting what's ours. I looked at my father, my voice breaking. And what about what's mine?
He didn't even blink.
You lost that when you stopped respecting your family.
The room fell silent.
My mother looked away. Noah laughed under his breath. And that was the moment it hit me. I wasn't losing my family. They had already thrown me out. They just hadn't said it aloud yet. It's strange how rejection becomes a routine. At first, it's small, a glance that lingers too long, a silence that answers more than words ever could.
But then, it grows teeth.
A month after I was cut off from the company, the family hosted our annual summer gathering, a weekend retreat meant to celebrate unity. I didn't want to go, but my mother insisted. You'll only make things worse if you stay away, she warned. The mansion looked the same as always, laughter spilling from every corner, cameras flashing, servants moving quietly like shadows. But I could feel it. The whispers. The pitying glances. I wasn't part of them anymore. I was the scandal walking among saints. At dinner, my father raised his glass again. To family, the only bond that never breaks. Elena smiled beside him. Noah clapped. I stayed quiet. Then Aunt Meredith, who lived for drama, leaned forward with a smirk. So, Amara, what are you doing these days? I heard you've been resting. Her tone carried venom wrapped in sugar. I forced a smile. Actually, I've been consulting on independent projects.
Elena laughed softly.
Independent projects? You mean sending resumes and getting rejected? The table erupted in light laughter. Even my mother smiled, that same polite smile she used when she didn't want to intervene. I swallowed the sting, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. Every chuckle, every whisper, carved another mark into my pride. Later that evening, I caught Noah bragging to guests about a new deal he closed. I recognized the project name, one that I'd built proposals for, months before being locked out.
He was claiming my work as his own. I confronted him in the hallway.
That contract you showed?
It was my design, my proposal.
He smirked, swirling his drink. You should have kept quiet, Amara. Maybe then you'd still have a seat at the table.
Lying doesn't make you a leader, I shot back.
He leaned in closer, his voice dripping with arrogance. And truth doesn't make you family. I wanted to slap that smirk off his face. Instead, I turned away, trembling, not from fear, but from fury I'd kept buried too long. The next day, Mom hosted a charity brunch. I volunteered to help serve, partly to prove I still belonged, partly to feel useful again. But when I approached the podium to greet the guests, my father's voice cut through the chatter.
Not now, Amara.
Let your sister handle this. Elena walked up, radiant and confident, taking the microphone I had just picked up. I stood there frozen, my hand empty, the crowd watching. I heard someone whisper, "Guess she's not part of the business anymore." I smiled tightly and stepped back, heart pounding in humiliation. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the reflection I barely recognized. My eyes were tired, but behind them, something sharper was forming. I was done begging for respect. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Grace, the family's lawyer and one of the few people who still spoke to me. "Amara, I need to see you.
There's something you should know.
It's about Noah and your father."
My hands trembled as I read it.
Something inside me shifted, fear blending with a strange calm. I didn't know what Grace had found, but deep down, I felt it. Whatever came next would change everything. When Grace asked to meet, I expected something small. Maybe another warning, another secret she couldn't say over the phone. But the look on her face that evening told me this was different. We met in a quiet cafe downtown, away from the polished perfection of my family's world. Grace's tone was cautious, her words deliberate. "Amara,
I found something while reviewing the company's quarterly filings.
Your name was removed from the shareholder list." I blinked, confused. Removed? That's not possible. My shares came from Mom's side, part of her inheritance.
Grace sighed.
I double-checked. The legal transfer happened 3 weeks ago. It looks like a full family agreement. The documents were signed by your father, your mother, and even Elena.
I felt my stomach twist.
Even Mom?
Grace nodded.
They claimed you willingly released your rights.
My breath caught.
That's a lie.
Her eyes softened. I know.
I couldn't speak for a while. It was as if every word I'd ever said, every effort I'd made to belong, was being erased, legally, completely. When I got home that night, the house was buzzing with activity. Elegant floral arrangements, catering trucks outside, staff running around. They were hosting something big. My mother spotted me and froze.
"You're early," she said carefully.
"For what?"
I asked.
She hesitated, then smiled that perfect, practiced smile. "Your brother's promotion dinner. The company board officially appointed him as managing director today."
The words landed like a knife.
Noah, managing director, while I'd been erased. And I wasn't invited. "It's complicated, darling," she said softly, eyes darting away. I could feel my pulse in my ears. "Complicated? You forged my name." Before she could respond, my father entered the hallway, adjusting his tie.
His expression hardened when he saw me. "Don't start, Amara."
"Not tonight."
"Not tonight." My voice trembled with disbelief.
"You stole my inheritance, everything I worked for, and you're asking me to stay quiet."
He straightened. "We didn't steal anything. You're the one who broke this family's unity."
"You made your choice when you sided with outsiders instead of us."
"I sided with truth," I snapped.
"And that scares you?" His tone dropped lower, more dangerous. "You've been nothing but trouble since the day you learned how to talk. Maybe now you'll finally learn when to stop." The doorbell rang. Guests had started arriving. My father turned his back on me, signaling the conversation was over.
Something in me cracked.
I followed them into the dining hall, where laughter and music filled the air. Elena stood on stage, dressed in gold, her smile glowing under the chandelier. Noah was beside her, grinning as people clapped and toasted. And then, my father took the microphone. "Tonight, we celebrate not just success, but unity. My son and my eldest daughter have carried our family legacy with pride and discipline."
He didn't even glance at me.
When he finished his speech, I stepped forward before anyone could stop me.
The chatter dimmed.
Dozens of eyes turned toward me, confusion, curiosity, a few smirks. "Unity," I said, voice shaking but clear. You mean betrayal.
Elena's smile faltered.
Amara, please, not here.
I ignored her. You forged my signature. You erased my name. You call that family? Gasps spread through the crowd. My mother's face turned white. My father's tone was ice.
You've embarrassed us enough.
No,
I whispered. You embarrassed yourselves when you chose lies over loyalty. Aunt Meredith stood from her seat, whispering loudly, "This is what happens when you let emotions run the business." The humiliation settled heavy in my chest. I could see people filming on their phones, their eyes greedy for drama. My father gestured to the guards. "Escort her out." The sound of those words, it hollowed me out. As the guards approached, my mother finally spoke, not to defend me, but to save face. "Please," she said to them. "Be gentle. She's unwell."
Unwell.
That's what they called me now. Insane, unstable, inconvenient.
I didn't fight back.
I let them walk me out through the crowd, my head held as high as I could manage. But inside, something was dying, and something else was being born. Outside, the air was cold, sharp. I could still hear the faint sound of applause echoing from inside, applause for my brother, for the family that disowned me. I stood there under the night sky, tears burning behind my eyes. I thought of all the years I had tried to please them, all the times I bit my tongue, all the times I let myself shrink so they could shine. No more. For the first time, the pain stopped feeling like weakness. It felt like fuel. Grace's words from earlier came back to me. They think you'll stay quiet because you're alone. Maybe I was alone, but I wasn't powerless. That night, I made a promise to myself. Quiet, steady, unbreakable. They took everything that was mine. Now, I would take back what was theirs. After the night they pushed me out, I lived on borrowed air for a while, a slow, hollow thing that barely kept my body moving. But grief has a way of sharpening you if you let it. The same wound that broke me opened my eyes. I stopped begging for mercy and started learning how to build a case instead. I rented a tiny room above a bakery, far from chandeliers and polite smiles. I called Grace every day, asking questions she couldn't say aloud before. She taught me to read ledgers the way other people read novels, to find the spaces where numbers didn't add up, the dates that didn't belong. I spent nights cross-referencing bank transfers, memorandums, and email threads I'd secretly kept. Each line I verified was a small victory. Each discrepancy was a crack I could widen. I also rebuilt myself quietly. I trained my voice not to tremble. I walked into crowded rooms like someone who belonged there by right. I spoke to former employees who'd been scared into silence and to an accountant who owed me more than courtesy. He owed me the truth. I paid him in coffee and honesty. He gave me spreadsheets with highlighted anomalies. I learned how Elena routed payments, how Noah masked transfers as consulting fees, and how my father signed off with the same steady hand he used for contracts and confessions. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about correcting a ledger of injustice. Still, every plan carried danger. If I moved too soon, they'd bury the evidence. If I leaked too late, they'd claim slander. Grace whispered strategy like a prayer. One wrong step and they'll call you a liar. One right step and the law will make them answer. I liked that, a cold, precise balance between risk and justice. I practiced my calm. I recorded meetings, saved copies, prepared anonymized files for journalists who cared about truth more than spectacle. I built an anonymous email account and sent small, undeniable proofs to a reporter I trusted. I watched the reporter's reaction when he read the first document, a single, silent nod through the phone. It felt like a promise. Emotionally, I became deliberate. I let my anger burn under a steady veneer of control. I wrote down every slight, every phrase they used to dismiss me, the words I would use one day when the world finally listened. I rehearsed what I'd say if I had to face them in a courtroom or on a stage. My voice transformed from the tremor of a wounded child into the stillness of someone who had counted the cost and chosen to pay it. But the most dangerous part of the plan was personal. I had to be willing to hurt them publicly, not for cruelty, but to strip away the armor of respectability they hid behind. I knew the moment I exposed the ledger, the family dinners, the charity galas, the smiles would crack and the town would watch. It would ruin more than their reputation. It would force them to feel the shame they'd made me carry. That thought scared me, even as it steadied my hand. Grace handed me the final stack of documents one rain-soaked evening. "You ready?" she asked. I folded the papers, feeling the weight of every truth inside.
I thought of the countless times I had swallowed my voice. I had learned how to speak only when the words could not be ignored.
"Ready," I said softly. Outside, thunder rolled like an audience holding its breath. Inside, I pressed my palm to the folder and felt my pulse align with the storm. Everything I had become, every quiet hour and stolen file, led to this one choice. If I stepped into the light now, there would be no turning back. The confrontation came disguised as celebration. The Lewis family's annual corporate press conference, held in the grand ballroom of the Carlton Hotel. Every year, they hosted it to announce new projects and flaunt their success. This time, the banners read Lewis Construction, a legacy of integrity.
The irony was almost poetic.
I hadn't been invited, of course. But I didn't need an invitation. Grace had already secured my legal ground, every document verified, every signature authenticated.
All I needed was timing.
As I entered the ballroom, heads turned.
People whispered.
I could feel their stares like cold wind against my skin. My mother froze mid-sentence on stage.
My father's smile tightened.
Elena's hand clutched the microphone, her knuckles whitening.
"Amara," my father said sharply. "This isn't the place."
I stepped forward, calm but unshakable. "No, Father, this is exactly the place. The world deserves to hear what your integrity really looks like." Cameras swiveled, flashes burst. A few reporters leaned in, sensing the scent of scandal.
Elena tried to maintain composure.
"You need to leave before you embarrass yourself again."
I smiled faintly.
"Oh, sister, I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." I took the small remote from my coat pocket, the one Grace had prepared, and pointed it toward the projector screen. The ballroom lights dimmed, and a presentation began to play. The first slide displayed company transaction records, wire transfers, dates, signatures.
My father's signature. Elena's approval stamps. Noah's expense accounts.
Each document timestamped, verified. Then came the voice recordings, snippets Grace and I had gathered from board meetings and phone calls. Father's voice. "Move the money to Noah's account. No one checks the family accounts anyway." Elena's voice. "If Amara asks questions again, we'll say she's unstable." A collective gasp rippled through the room.
My father lunged toward the screen. "Turn that off." But it was too late. The truth was already out. I faced the audience.
For years, I was told to stay silent in the name of respect, to protect a family that thrived on deception. You called me ungrateful, disobedient, even unwell. But all I ever did was tell the truth. My mother's eyes glistened, trembling between shame and denial. "Amara, please, don't do this."
I turned to her gently.
"You should have stopped them when you could, Mom.
You taught me dignity."
"But you forgot it when you chose reputation over justice." Elena stood up, her voice cracking.
"You think this will make you look noble?
You just destroyed your own family." I met her gaze, calm and unwavering.
"No, Elena.
I destroyed the lie you built our family on." Reporters flooded the stage, microphones and cameras closing in. My father shouted something about fabrications, but the evidence on the screen spoke louder than his words. In that moment, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt release, a deep, steady calm that comes only when the truth finally breathes. Noah tried to sneak toward the exit, but a journalist caught his arm. Questions swarmed him. "Did you authorize these payments? Were you aware of the forged signatures?" He stuttered, his arrogance dissolving in real time. My father, red-faced, turned back to me. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said softly. "I've done what you should have done years ago."
The crowd went silent.
For a long second, the only sound was the low hum of cameras and the quiet shattering of pride. My mother covered her face with her hands. Elena sank into her chair, trembling. My father's shoulders slumped as if the weight of years finally pressed down on him. I looked at them one last time, not with hate, but with finality. "You taught me that silence was respect. Today, I taught you that truth is dignity." Grace appeared at my side, nodding slightly.
"It's done," she whispered.
As I walked off the stage, reporters swarmed behind me, flashes lighting the path like lightning.
I didn't stop. I didn't look back.
Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from shame. I was walking through it, head held high. Behind me, the family that once called me a disgrace was left speechless, surrounded by the echo of their own lies. And as the ballroom doors closed, I whispered to myself, calm, certain, free.
This isn't revenge.
This is justice, finally given its name. The next morning, the world felt quieter. Not peaceful, just emptied. The kind of silence that follows after a storm has wrecked everything in its path. The headlines were everywhere. Lewis family scandal exposed. Daughter reveals years of financial and emotional abuse. Reporters camped outside the gates, their voices muffled behind microphones and flashing cameras. But I didn't need to speak anymore. I had already said what needed to be said. For years, I had imagined that moment, how it would feel to finally be seen, to have the truth heard.
I thought it would feel triumphant. But instead, it felt still. Heavy. Real.
The kind of victory that doesn't make you smile, but makes you breathe deeper for the first time in years. I packed my last box quietly, the one that still smelled like the old house. Inside were photos from before the betrayal. Family dinners, birthdays, laughter that once felt pure.
I didn't tear them. I didn't burn them. I just closed the box and left it behind. Some memories deserve to fade on their own. Grace called from the porch.
You're sure you don't want to stay until it settles down?
I smiled faintly.
It already has, Grace. They are the ones who need to find their balance now. We drove past the old estate, tall gates, high walls, everything so perfect from the outside.
But perfection is brittle.
It only takes one truth to crack it wide open. I saw my father standing in the garden, motionless. My mother sat near the porch, her face turned away. For the first time, there were no accusations, no shouted insults, just silence. The kind that comes when words have lost their power. Elena was nowhere in sight. Maybe she was hiding. Maybe she was breaking. But I didn't wish her pain anymore. I had carried enough of that for both of us. As we reached the highway, Grace looked at me and asked softly, "Do you regret any of it?" I looked out the window, watching the city lights blur into gold streaks.
No, I said quietly.
I only regret believing for so long that I needed their love to be whole. That line hung in the air, the truth I had searched for all my life. Because love given as a condition isn't love. It's control. And once you stop chasing it, you learn that self-worth doesn't come from others, it's something you build from the pieces they tried to break. Weeks later, I started a foundation in my name, the Amara Initiative, dedicated to those silenced within families that pretend to be perfect. Every story I read reminded me why I had survived, not to destroy, but to rebuild. One afternoon, a reporter asked me during an interview, if you could say one thing to your family now, what would it be? I smiled, calm, steady, certain. I'd thank them. Because in trying to erase me, they taught me to write my own name in stone.
And that was the truth. The final, unshakable truth. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their approval. What I found was far greater. Dignity without permission, peace without validation, and freedom without guilt. Because sometimes justice isn't about punishing those who wronged you, it's about finally loving yourself enough to walk away. And as the evening light washed over the city skyline, I whispered the words that had once felt impossible. I am not their disgrace anymore, I am my own redemption.